my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Om Nalamasu. I actually was an intern for Om back in 2021 in the office of the CTO, and so I got to see the insides of Applied Materials firsthand, and very honored to be here to do this fireside chat. Om has had a very distinguished, storied career. He's been the CTO of Applied Materials for the last 14 years. Before that, he was the director of materials at Bell Labs. Before that, a distinguished professor, and he got his PhD at the University of British Columbia on the type 1, type 2 Norris reactions back in 1986. Yes. And so he's a true material scientist at heart. And I think it's very exciting because Om has been really at the center of all of these topics that we've been talking about. I think it's not too much of a stretch to say that every single chip in the world and every single one of your computers has been touched by Applied Materials tools. And they have really been the enabling technology that is doing the foundation of everything else we're talking today. And you've been at kind of this amazing vantage point to see all of this. And so thank you. Thank you for coming here and chatting with us. I do want to say that CTO, Chief Technology Officer, is kind of a vague term. I think in a lot of different organizations at small, medium, large scale, it can mean a lot of different things. And so I really wanted to start off by asking, what does CTO mean to you? What are your responsibilities?
Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation. You must have liked your experience at Applied to be able to invite me after 4 years. So hopefully we did something good by you. And as you were talking about different areas that are discussed and debated as opportunities, they all have one thing in common. Basically, it is the deep tech. Okay? So coming to Applied, what we do, as you pointed out, is semiconductor equipment and process technology. As you pointed out, any chip that has ever been made in the last 60, 70 years, we probably had 50% of the technologies making that chip happen. What people don't recognize is that is also true for the display technology. We are the leading display equipment company as well. But coming to the CTO organization in Applied, again, CTO organizations are structured differently in different companies. In our company, it's not a pointy head organization, but it's more of a business incubator, and venture studio is the construct. So what we do is basically do two things: look at the disruptions in the core markets where we play, and if we are going to be disrupted, we should disrupt ourselves, and that's our charter. And secondly, look at inflections, the big inflections that are going to be shaping the world of tomorrow. And if you think about semiconductor technology as materials engineering, and the way we define materials engineering is atomic engineering on an industrial scale. So if you're looking at a 2-nanometer device today, it has 2,500 process steps, and pretty much every one of them is a couple of nanometers film. So it's really controlling those surfaces and interfaces with atomic precision. So if you think of our capability with that kind of a lens, and it creates enormous opportunity in doing other things, whether it is solar or LED in the past, whether you're looking at photonics or if you're looking at optical communications, all of them really have the fundamental driver of these technologies is atomic engineering on an industrial scale. So what we, again, do in the CTO organization is basically incubate these businesses, and we do it by a combination of things. We follow what's called open innovation methodology. We have internal R&D. We collaborate with customers. We have a venture fund. We can talk more about that. That has about 100 companies with about $500 million investment, roughly the size of TDK's venture fund. We have made investments in 19 countries, and every one of them basically is a deep tech company that we have invested. We work with universities extensively across the globe. But fundamentally, it is about taking your own capabilities, combining with the capabilities that are out there at large, and creatively stitching them together so you have a time-effective and cost-effective concept to commercialization or innovation to commercialization with a high hit rate.
Right.
So it's a very different construct. In fact, we debated whether we should call it Office of the CTO or Emerging Businesses Unit.
So I mean, it's unique in the sense that, I would naively think that you were looking over the R&D for the other business units and deposition and etch or other things, but you guys are completely separate and kind of overarching. You're not doing R&D for those business units.
Yeah, to the extent I do, traditional CTO functions is basically responsible for the stewardship of innovation in the company, our technical career ladder, the fellows and masters, and really trying to make sure that innovation is thriving within Applied Materials. But I'm not involved in, let's say, decisions between the business units and their customers for the next 2 to 3 nodes. But beyond that is where we come into picture. If there is a new market that we should be addressing, for example, Applied is not a big player in lithography, but we have come up with a digital lithography solution based on an investment that we made through Applied Ventures and acquired the company. This could be pretty important for packaging, as an example. Or look at entirely new areas. For example, we repurposed our roll-to-roll technologies to come up with a battery solution. We spun it out as elevator materials with a $250 million investment from TPG.
Amazing. And so, in addition to the work you're doing as overarching, managing the innovation within Applied, you mentioned that you're also the president of Applied Ventures. And so, like us, another CVC. And I think really exciting because currently we have 2 co-investments, and fingers crossed, all things go well, 2 more coming up. And so that's going to be one of the biggest partnerships that we have in the context of our portfolios. But how do you view the CVC in the context of the Office of the CTO, in the context of Applied's greater mission?
So I tell inside that we're one of the oldest CVCs. We've been around for 25 years. I would say one of the biggest CVCs, certainly in the case of deep tech. Our returns are in the top quartile. But I think the one I'm most proud of, and the one where there is deep connectivity with Applied, I would say is that we are the most strategic CVC, in my opinion. So we have clarity on why we exist, what are some of the things that we do. So the things that we talk about, our mission, is we invest to learn. We want to learn about a new inflection that is taking place, a new ecosystem that we want to test the waters. Then some of those companies become invest to acquire for us. And we have acquired more than a handful of the companies in the past. Then we also invest in suppliers. So we want to, if you're looking for a critical technology or a critical component, and we want to make sure that there is a vibrant supply chain. And we all know the importance of the supply chain coming just from COVID. Then the other one is test new business models. If I'm going after a new market, product is important, but equally important, if not more important, is the business model and how you enable that market and how do you get paid for the innovation that you're bringing to the table. And there are other things that we do. For example, postmortems. It's done better by our CVC group than people who are embedded in doing something. So you can look at it from an outside in. And there is more and more connectivity between M&A group and our CVC group, and I play a role in both of them. So I think it plays a very important role, within Applied, and the idea is disruptive growth for the company.
That's amazing. So yeah, investing to learn, really investing for disruption. I think you don't know what you don't know.
Absolutely.
And when you're in these large organizations, they have a momentum of their own. And so you really need that outside spark to be able to move you from equilibrium. We were talking about the CVC, and you talked about some of kind of the things that you loved. I know that when I was an intern there as well, as part of the Office of the CTO in the open innovation platform that we had, we organize a lot of these open innovation workshops. And so I got a chance to help organize the flat optics innovation workshop. Actually, I think MetaLens, which is one of our co-investments, is here today. And I got to see how you guys brought together a lot of the leading voices in the industry, whether it's from the university side, whether it's from the industry, and to kind of really give a platform to see what can be in the future. And I think out of those types of discussions, actually a very exciting project has started within Applied on engineered optics. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. If you think of the semiconductor industry, it's really about controlling an electron with a material stack. And the question we were asking is, if you can control photon in a pixelated way using a material stack, what kind of problems can you solve? I mean, we call it engineered optics or flat optics. There are different names for this. So that's the journey we have started, and the first application happens to be in the area of augmented reality. We are making quite a bit of progress. We are working with leading systems companies and startup companies, and we are actually working with some of them. We are building a manufacturing facility in Singapore, so where we would actually sell leading-edge waveguides to enable augmented reality glasses that would presumably weigh less than 50 grams, and you should be able to wear it day in, day out. You can have a very good field of view with vivid resolution, high contrast. So really, AR device, unlike a phone, it's all about experience. Glasses tend to be an expression of ourselves. You want to wear the right glasses, you want to have the right experiences. So the quality of the display and of course energy efficiency overall is extremely critical. So I think that's where we are bringing some really, really unique technologies. But you can only imagine the number of things that you would be able to solve with a technology like this. We are already beginning to see some very exciting applications, and we have programs in optical interconnects. And if you're looking at today's data center architecture, if you're looking at data center adoption, if there is one thing that is limiting the proliferation of the data centers more than today, is going to be the energy consumption, right? So it's going to play an important role. Even in quantum, for example, if you're looking at technologies like cold atoms, trapped ions, meta-optics can play a very important role. So I see there is quite a bit of opportunity, but again, you need to build a business based on one or two critical applications that we're working on. So I worked at Bell Labs for 17 years of my career. At that time, there were quite a few people who worked on transistor over there. And if you talk to them, none of them could realize that that is going to be the fundamental building block for the $500 billion semiconductor industry today. Actually, it's not $500 billion, it's $600 billion this year. So again, it's a fundamental capability. I think this whole photonics is going to be a big player in the future.
And I do really want to touch point, I think, on the beauty of what you guys did. I mean, you guys are masters in manipulating silicon on a large scale at 300 millimeter lines, but essentially you're changing the material stack from a silicon to glass. And so now you go from transparent, and how do you take the same tools and technologies that you have, entirely different material, and still enable volume and scale?
And glass is just the beginning. I mean, you want to continuously increase the refractive index. Glass has a limitation of somewhere around 2.2. If you want to go to 2.5 or 2.5 to 2.7, you can go to silicon carbide. If you want to go into 2.4 to 2.5, you go to lithium niobate. Then there is a whole metamaterials approach to go to refractive index higher than 3. So as you increase the refractive index, you can increase the field of view. You have much richer, much more vivid display. So again, the whole materials engineering comes to play a big role in building a roadmap. We as a company do very well if the business has a roadmap and you're actually playing a role in driving the innovation, right? I mean, in silicon industry, if you snooze, you lose. And that's where we do very well. The moment an industry transitions from a innovation-driven industry to cost-driven industry, at least my experience tells me that the high-tech companies in the United States are at disadvantage. That's exactly what happened in the telecom industry. Same thing happened in solar. Same thing happened in LEDs. Same thing is happening in the batteries. The moment it transitions to cost, there are different dynamics.
Right. And I want to touch base on that. When I joined Applied, I think one of the big lessons that was reiterated to me was about Applied's kind of failures or learnings that they had in the solar industry. So I think between roughly 2008, 2015, you guys had a whole solar manufacturing line. You're trying to make solar panels, sell them. No, that ultimately didn't work. And so considering that you guys are again going into an entirely homegrown effort in engineered optics, I guess what are some of the lessons that you're learning from the lessons you had in the solar industry?
Yeah, so a couple of them. One, again, if you look at the solar, Applied got into solar because the wisdom around 2006, 2007 time period, that semiconductor industry, reached a peak. If you look at the overall wafer fab equipment, it was 30 billion plus or minus a couple of $1 billion, bouncing at the bottom of the barrel. So we needed to look for new opportunities. And in general, my experience is that anytime you want to be wrong, bet against the semiconductor industry. You would certainly be wrong. So here we are basically, pretty vibrant. But in 2006 to 2009 time period, we have built up the business to be $3 billion. But that industry is not like the semiconductor industry. Semiconductor industry constantly reinvents itself. Every 18 months, you have a new node. But solar doesn't have that kind of an innovation. And secondly, there isn't a whole lot of service revenue because you sell this damn tool that works for the next 25 years without a whole lot of needing tender loving care, right?
Right.
So I think if there is one lesson for me coming to the Silicon Valley, pay as much attention to the business model as you pay for the product. If we were selling panels, not the equipment, which was copied by China, if you were selling the panels, this industry never had a downturn. It's growing at 30% year over year. And solar, in fact, in many parts of the world, is cheaper for a new power plant based on solar versus fossil fuels.
And then I guess kind of you mentioned elevated materials. And so TDK owns ATL. ATL is the largest producer of consumer electric lithium-ion batteries. And so, we're also heavily in the battery game. Elevated materials, you guys spun out, seems like a big success. What is the work that you're doing there, and then what kind of business model is that based on?
Yeah, so again, as I was mentioning, 6-7 years ago, we were looking at a whole lot of new inflections before Gen AI came up and this market became not red hot, but white hot, right?
Yeah.
There are so many challenges in the semiconductor industry. So we got into this business because we have a roll-to-roll business in Germany. And if you ever eat potato chips, inside the potato chip, you see this aluminum oxide coating. That's done with Applied Materials tools. And we deposit 10 nanometers of aluminum oxide at 70 kilometers an hour.
Wow.
So then we were trying to look for what new exciting inflections that we can work on. So batteries is certainly, right? If there is a Moore's law for batteries, doubling energy density every 7 years. That's not the most exciting prospect, right? So you want to do it something different. So what are you trying to do? You're trying to decrease the cost of the battery somewhere around $100 to $120 a kilowatt hour down to 60. So you reach the internal combustion engine parity. And you want to have fast charge so you can presumably pump 150 miles worth of electrons in about 5 minutes so you can use the gas station infrastructure. And then you want to do it in a way you have a technology roadmap. So it is good for LFP, so you can increase the lifetime by 3x for grid applications, increase the energy density by 13%. You can basically reclaim the first cycle loss from silicon as an anode. But most importantly, these lithium films, that's what elevated cells, are going to be a critical component to make solid-state batteries happen. And again, the learnings is that elevator materials actually sells film dollars per meter square rather than sell the equipment. Now, lithium is a difficult material to hand. The systems were very difficult to produce. It took us a lot of time. But we wanted to make sure that we control the technology and we have a materials business rather than an equipment business.
That's amazing. I mean, I think already we've seen 3 examples of manufacturing, AR, VR. I know you guys do robotics, and then as well as the AI compute in terms of all the photonics you do. So really a special vantage point, and I think really exciting. And I think most people don't know this about Applied. I mean, all these exciting things are happening, relatively unknown. I guess from this vantage point, I kind of want to take us to the last section of the discussion, which is really the future of the semiconductor industry, right? You already said let's not bet against it, and I agree with you. And I think you mentioned the $500 billion in roughly 70 years that's happened, and people are predicting another $500 billion in the next 7 years. So even the pace of the growth of the semiconductor industry is increasing quite a bit. But what do you really think is kind of the key critical things that you need to tackle as an organization and the industry needs to tackle?
Yeah. So the industry is going to reach $600 billion, as you pointed out. It took 70 years to get to the first $500 billion. All indications are that by 2030, the industry would exceed $1 trillion in revenue. So 70 years for the first $500 billion, 7 years for the second $500 billion. And AI, and including Gen AI, is the biggest inflection of our life, right? I mean, it pretty much impacts anything and everything that we do, depending on which report you read. By 2040, this would generate another 18 to $25 trillion worth of GDP for the globe. So obviously a lot of challenges. The complexity of the technology is going up. If you're looking at logic, at 2 nanometers, we're already talking about 2,500 process steps. So now you're talking about 14 angstrom devices, 10 angstrom devices, all that good stuff. But the innovation vector has been the third dimension, right? There's a whole lot of interesting things going on, starting with the FinFET. You're looking at gate-all-around. You're looking at CFET. You're looking at packaging as a new paradigm of innovation, heterogeneous integration. So, but fundamentally, they're trying to do one thing. So they want to give you higher performance at lower energy consumption. People don't recognize in the last 17, 18 years, the cost, energy cost to do a bit of computation has come down by 10,000 times.
Wow, 10,000.
10,000 times. And you need to do another 10,000 times in the next 10 years, basically. And that's more or less the fundamental driver behind anything and everything that we do. Whether it is a gate-all-around structure or new HBM or 3D DRAM devices, heterogeneous integration and packaging. And certainly within this time period, quantum is going to kick in. And we also believe that one thing quantum needs at this point, in my opinion, almost all the innovation is coming from software and algorithms. Very little focus is done on building better qubits, high volume manufacturing compatible qubits. And we believe that has to do with controlling the surfaces, interfaces, increasing the Q factor, reducing the error rate, increasing the coherence length, and increasing the uniformity of qubits. And everything else is still going to be icing on the cake. But I think that's one area that's not being focused on. Within 10 to 15 years, I think that would come in as well. And some people we had a ChatGPT movement in quantum recently when IBM and HSBC announced that you can do better probability with respect to bond trading using quantum algorithms.
Nice, yeah. So really kind of more innovation happening in quantum. and a lot more algorithms happening in that space. I think people are starting to find business use cases for that application space.
Without offending if there are physicists in the room, the quantum paper that where they showed quantum supremacy by Google had 250 authors from what I heard. 245 of them were physicists. So we need to go from a physics-driven device innovation, software and algorithm innovation to manufacturing innovations to make low-cost, high-fidelity qubits and quantum devices.
Amazing. Well, I think we're just about time. We're going to save a few questions, but I think you really beautifully stated that energy efficiency is maybe the number one goal for the semiconductor industry, 10,000x. And so we have the 100x from TDK, and then another 100x.
100 times 100.
100 times 100 is 10,000. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wonderful talk.
Absolutely.
So it seems we have like a few minutes left for questions. I think Starry's walking around with a microphone.
Thank you very much. We met just before. Very interesting summary. I'm particularly interested in two factors. You mentioned that as CTO of Applied Materials, you are not responsible for the development of the different units. And the second thing that I'm very interested in is how do you make sure, so you're analyzing trends which are relevant not for the next 2 years, but 3 years onwards. So what kind of people do you have in your organization to do that, and at the same time keep the focus on what you mentioned on the business savviness? I'm very interested in that. Thank you.
So one of my mentors when I joined Applied Materials is a gentleman named Jim Morgan. Jim was not quite the founding father, but you could consider him founding father of Applied Materials. And his advice to me was, if you want to do something new, you cannot just have 100% of applied people. You won't get anything new. But if you get 100% of people from outside, or a vast majority of them from outside, you would have tissue rejection. They would be rejected by the system, right? So I go for roughly 50-50. If I want to go for batteries, I better get some world-class experts. But they would be rejected by the system. Make sure that you strengthen them with people from Applied Materials. And secondly, I look for people who can bootstrap themselves, right? I mean, you got to have a big vision. You got to be scrappy, and you need to want to do good for the world, and everything else is nice within that construct. So a lot of folks in my organizations have spent time in startups in the past. We have people who have academic backgrounds. So it is really team constitution. Bring some world-class experts, ground them, strengthen them with applied people, and make sure that you have the right processes so they have exposure to rest of the applied, and they can draw in applied technologies as well as contribute to applied. So you do need to pay good attention to the team constitution.
Nice, thank you. Any more questions?
Yeah, is there a qubit architecture that you see is going to be much more scalable than what exists presently?
So I'll give you what people are betting on. So if you look at the different technologies that are out there, superconducting is the one that has a lot of momentum. Tens of systems have been installed, anywhere between 8 qubits to 400 qubits. There is a lot of money going into photonics-based qubit companies. PsiQuantum is a poster child. $7 billion valuation, I think, last time. A couple of $1 billion of incentives from Australia, state of Illinois, and so on. But I think there is a dark horse, which is basically some combination of cold atoms and trapped ions. I think there are some interesting things that could be done. So these are the three things. Steve Chu is on my advisory committee. 2 years ago, we were talking to him about superconducting and photonics as the two choices. Then I said, look for this dark horse. And so there is some interesting things going on in that. But I would say the first systems, presumably, would be superconducting based. That's my gut.
Question on quantum. So I haven't read that paper that you mentioned, but if it is 100 plus physics authors, it's more along the lines of a high energy physics niche application rather than something that will come into the consumer mainstream. So from your experience, what do you think is needed for quantum to evolve into something that will be a product?
So two things. 2025 is the year of the quantum by United Nations. So a lot of action going on. And secondly, obviously, phenomenal progress takes place in the early stage, demonstrating the physics and demonstrating the utility of a new device. So physicists rule the world, so I was just making a joke, so nothing against them. To me, what is really missing is that if you look at all the good work that is done, really done by optimizing the algorithms and optimizing basically software, with the exception of IBM. IBM is actually vertically integrated. They have all the way from materials, devices, systems, and hardware, software, everything combined. So others are not quite there. So in my view, people are fabricating these devices with 1980s technology. And what really needs to be done is to bring in state-of-the-art semiconductor technology to have an impact. Dante was talking about this open innovation workshops we do. So we have actually done 3 workshops in quantum over the last 4 or 5 years. First time we did this, people were asking, who the hell is Applied Materials and why are you doing this quantum workshop? Today, we are working with half a dozen companies. For every dollar I'm spending, they're giving me $4 to work on the problems. Because people are recognizing the impact the state-of-the-art semiconductor technology can have on building robust qubits. It's all about reducing the error rate. Error rate today is 1%. That means you need something like 200,000 physical qubits for one logical qubit, which is not really scalable, right? But imagine reducing the error rate by 4 to 5 orders of magnitude. You only need 20 to 200 qubits for one logical qubit. And 4 to 5 orders of magnitude in semiconductor industry is right around the corner, right? Because this is an exponential industry.
This question is slightly to do with export control and IP control. A company of your stature that's a global company, a lot of countries are trying to build technologies that are going to become offensive weapon-grade technologies using these quantum systems. How do you control your IP right now? Because you must be seeding across the world various platforms. So it's kind of I don't have a clarity, but I would like to understand your viewpoint.
Yeah, IP is very critical. We have something like 15,000 issued patents. On average, Applied Materials protects 5 inventions every day, including Saturdays, Sundays, and national holidays. So IP is very, very important for our business. And, IP is very sensitive from multiple dimensions. It is sensitive for your own future. It is sensitive from geopolitical consideration. But it is also extremely sensitive with our customers. Our customers are fiercely competitive with each other. And how we work with them is extremely important with respect to protecting the IP. So this is something we pay attention to. Where you build what part, where do you assemble your systems? So, our manufacturing gravity today is in United States, Singapore, and Israel, right? And these are the countries where you can have good control over IP. Now, you do service your customers wherever they are in the world, but there is less risk for the IP. Now, world is full of smart people, given enough time, somebody can take your system apart and can build it. So the key is that you want to run faster than anybody else can. Fortunately, semiconductor industry is an industry that's fiercely competitive and driven by constant innovation. As long as it is innovation driven, I think we are in good shape. But that's something we pay a lot of attention to.
Wonderful. Well, let's give another round of applause to Om.
Thank you.